Member Denise Roach. Tēnā koe, Ms Roach.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. I'm pleased to take a call for the Greens on the first reading of the Health and Safety Reform Bill. We will be supporting it. This bill, as you know, is an omnibus bill which signals the most comprehensive changes to our health and safety laws for about 22 years, when the Health and Safety and Employment Act 1992 took effect, and others have critiqued it before me, so I won't bother to go into that. This bill follows on from the Independent Task Force on Workplace Health and Safety, and also the Royal Commission on the Pike River mine tragedy, and the recommendations from both of those. The government has already enacted some of the recommendations from the Pike River Royal Commission when it passed the Health and Safety Pike River Implementation Act last year. Some of the recommendations, not all of them. The government has very clearly said that it wants to reduce workplace deaths and injuries by 25% by 2020. And we agree. No family should experience having a loved one killed on the job, having a loved one who never comes home from work, like the 10 families of forestry workers who lost their lives last year. According to the regulatory impact statement from the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Economics that accompanies this bill, they estimate that between 600 and 900 workers lose their lives to workplace illness or disease every year. That's between 600 and 900 people. And that between one to two people die in traumatic incidences at work every week. That's 52 to 104 people every year killed at work. And on top of that, about 1 in 10 workers is harmed at work. We'll be supporting this bill. Of course we will. We'll support any bill that attempts to reduce the incidence of harm to our citizens. We are, however, concerned that although the reforms in the bill are good, they don't go far enough, and I think we've heard from this side of the House about that. I note that this bill still takes a bit of a soft approach that's been carried over from the 1992 Act. And in the explanatory note in this bill, it says, Clause 22 relates to the key principle of managing risks. It provides that a duty imposed on a person under this bill to ensure health and safety requires a person to eliminate risks to health and safety so far as reasonably practicable, and if it is not practicable, to eliminate risks to health and safety, to minimise those risks so far as reasonably practicable. So how does that play out in the forest, I wonder? Reasonably practical is significantly different for someone working alone in a forest, miles from anywhere, with a desperate urge to make his quota. And that's very different from an office worker or a flight attendant or a warehouse worker. Today I was visited by two of the panel members on the independent inquiry into forestry health and safety to talk about the terms of reference for that inquiry. We were slightly disappointed that this government did not see fit to undertake that inquiry themselves, but it's clear from whatever the evidence you look at that voluntary codes of practice are not enough to keep workers safe in the forests. Much has been made of the fact that this bill is similar to the Australian model of health and safety legislation. It sort of is, but not quite. One of the crucial elements missing is the voice of workers. And I think this is alluded to in the bit in the agency disclosure statement from MB in the second to last line, which says modifications to the Australian model law are proposed where they're considered necessary to fit with New Zealand's circumstances. So what are those New Zealand circumstances? Well, I would suggest that it's union membership. If you have a look in the regulatory impact statement on page 14, there's a fairly telling graph which shows the difference between the rate of accidents, excluding road accidents, for workers in Australia and workers in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So if we're introducing the same laws, we are failing if we are going to be ignoring the voice of workers and the role of unions in making sure voices workers are heard. In Australia, in 2012, there were 1.8 million Australians who were members of a trade union. And unions have a place at the table. They are part of a tripartite system of monitoring, evaluating, and keeping track of health and safety on work sites. We know that in Aotearoa, New Zealand, a unionised workplace is a safer workplace, and I note that the RIS doesn't have a comparative graph in here which compares the health and safety track records of unionised versus non-unionised work sites, that have collective agreements versus those with individual agreements. Unions play a significant part in maintaining a culture of health and safety on the workplace. And I guess one of the tragic comparisons we can make is between the Pike River mine, which was, as we know, ununionised frequently, and the workers were basically in a culture where they did not see health and safety as a priority. And if we compare that mine with the Huntly mine, which is highly unionised, workers are members of the Engineers Printing Manufacturing Union, and they certainly stand up for health and safety on a daily basis and don't let the standards slip. In Aotearoa, New Zealand, we particularly need that voice heard on behalf of workers, because workers frequently are in a position where they cannot speak for themselves. We are currently in a position where we have reasonably high unemployment, job insecurity, increased casualisation, and we have the Minister of Labour who has introduced legislation that will make it worse for workers. It will remove, this legislation includes the introduction of 90-day trials, or that has been included over the last term, but it removes the latest Employment Relations Amendment Bill, removes the capacity for union bargaining and the offer of collective employment agreements to workers who start in the first 30 days. Basically, the Employment Relations Amendment Bill counteracts some of the benefits that the government is trying to put forward in this health and safety reform bill, because the Employment Relations Amendment Bill undermines the ability for workers to have a voice. We're also concerned that it's not just employees who will have a problem with this. Unless we fully resource our government agencies to ensure that employers are trained up, then we also risk their ability to participate in creating healthy and safe workplaces. Mr. Speaker, we will be supporting the bill, but we're interested to see where we can improve it during the Select Committee process, and I particularly look forward to hearing from the forestry sector about what they will be doing to improve the health and safety of workers in their sector.
Mr. Speaker.
I call the Honourable Member Chris Ockenbold.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this